Here we are at the gun table again. Took me a few days to make these videos. Sorry about the delay. It seems to be busy around here these days. Right off the bat, I wanted to thank those of you that have contacted me by messages, and those of you I've chatted with on the phone. You know who you are. Really good conversations, and I'm so impressed with what everybody is up to out there. I think the future for firearms and firearms design is bright, and I look forward to seeing some of the products that you're working on in your garages and shops and elsewhere. Like I said, truly impressive, and please feel free to message me anytime. I get back to you as soon as I can. Anyhow, in a previous episode I had this rifle on the table. I think we were talking about straight pull bolt actions. This is a Blaser R93 CISM, which is a military competition version of the R93, but people asked me to talk a little bit more about it because they haven't seen this version of the Blaser straight pull bolt. So I hauled it out of the vault, and then there were some other questions about guns, so I'll just speak generally. So some people were asking me to show close up a Mauser 98 and a Mauser 66. So this actually all fits together, even if it doesn't sound like it at the outset. So here we have the Mauser 98. You can see the length of the action. There's the front receiver ring, the rear, and you can, it has the opposed locking lugs, which we all know. And then Mauser decided, the company, to make the 66. And you can see the action is substantially shorter. Some people were anticipating that it's shorter than it is. It's a little bit shorter, not that much, but it's a game of percentages, like anything, sports cars and so on. And you can see that the barrel begins here and here, and so this Mauser 66, because of the shorter action, has a barrel the same length as the Mauser 98, but now we'll move the rifles equivalently, and you can see the Mauser is a much longer firearm. Now some people would say, what difference does that make? And maybe they would be right to say that, but some people like having carbine length rifles, and as I said, if we all wanted just one rifle, it would probably be this one or something like it. And so it's always nice to see new products. So anyway, that answers that one. You can see that the 66 is definitely a shorter action, and yet has almost all the features of the Mauser 98, except for one problem, and that is that the cartridges have to be loaded from the top because there's no place for a floor plate. This ties in with the Blasers that we're going to be talking about in a moment, and as you know from prior videos, they accomplished the action length by way of this telescopic bolt system, which is interesting on its own. And you know that I like these Mauser 66s. Anyhow, so Blaser came along, and they actually started out with a bolt action. I don't remember the model number. I had one. They called it the Ultimate Rifle in the United States, and it had an action similar to the Mauser 66, except that instead of having the telescopic action, the bolt opens and the bolt moves on rails. You can find these on Google. Sorry, I don't remember the model right offhand. But then they decided that they would take things a step further and go for speed of fire or rate of fire, and offer a short action straight pull bolt rifle. And in order to really get the straight pull sorted out, they went for the radial locking collet. Some people have all kinds of names for the locking system. I've shown it to you before, but just for the sake of review, here's the R8. I don't know if we can focus in on this locking mechanism, but you can see as the action is locked, this collet expands. So if you can picture the chamber over this bolt, the bolt is closed, and that would be the locking system right there. That's the R8. But getting back to the military target rifle, I actually probably would have to say this is my most inherently accurate rifle. And I was just pausing as I was talking there because I shoot a whole bunch of different rifles. But as far as the bolt action goes, it's not a turn bolt, it's this one. For the people that like target shooting, it has all the features you'd be looking for. This actually is bedded in aluminum, so there's absolutely no chance for anything to change. It's not a polymer, not a nylon, not a composite. It's a milled aluminum chassis, and the barrel's free floating. It's an R93 action, so if you're familiar with how it opens and closes. I should have taken off the scope mount. Anyway, you can see the similarity, and I'll just set the CISM down and you can have a look at the regular R93. Same action, except for one major thing, that is the R93 you have to feed from the top like the Mauser 66 because your trigger is in the way of a floor plate or a magazine. So for the target version, they did an intelligent thing, and they said, well, we'll just pop the magazine under the action. This is not the action's fault. This is my clumsiness. There's the removable magazine, and you can see right through the action. And like I said, that was my fumbling. It's actually very easy to do. They even put a nice arrow on the bottom so you don't get confused which way to load it. So that's the CISM. It has a fully adjustable trigger, and as you can see, this does not look anything like the classic English sporters that you're used to hearing me talk about. But nevertheless, all this technology is not for no reason. It's an exceptional firearm. And getting back to why I was talking about the imperatives that manufacturers get in their heads, when I bought this, it was a total fluke. A guy phoned me and he said, "Do you want to buy a Blaser R93 CISM?" And I said, "Yes, but what is it?" And so he described this to me, and he said it's yellow, and he said they come in other colors. Naturally, I had to have a look at it, so it showed up in the mail, and here it is. I mean, it's fantastic. And when I first saw it, I thought, well, why did they bother with this whole system of loading from the top? The magazine is oddly constructed. This all works, of course, but nevertheless, if you like steel magazines and that kind of thing, it's a little bit strange. And who knows why they didn't just make this firearm. I think it's because they wanted to preserve that shortness of the action. And of course, for the magazine in the bottom, you have to do some engineering tricks to get the angles right and so on. And I guess it's a pretty deep action, although you don't have to have that many rounds in a magazine either. Anyhow, so then they first introduced the R93, then came, I guess, the CISM and the LRS, which is a long-range sporter. But a lot of people said, we want the removable magazine, and so they changed to the R8. And you can see the R8 is very unconventional because the whole action comes out the bottom. That's what it looks like with the trigger assembly and magazine, which are one. So I mean, it's really compelling engineering, there's no doubt about it. And I guess you can carry a spare magazine, which means you would carry a spare trigger assembly. And this all works, by the way, a lot more smoothly than my handling makes it seem. I don't do this often, so I'm a little clumsy with it. Anyhow, that's the R8, modified, slightly beefier locking system. And the R93 is now discontinued. I think they just make barrels for it. and then the CISM. I don't have an LRS2, but for those of you that were wondering what this rifle is, that is it. It's for military competition. And the CISM organization, which you can Google, was formed in 1948, I think by France and Belgium and maybe 2 or 3 other countries, I think including Luxembourg. Anyway, they compete in all kinds of sports. It's kind of a sport federation for military personnel. And this rifle plays into that equation. Other than that, the only feature that you might not be accustomed to seeing is if you look at the barrel closely, there are a couple of screws here. So people often ask me what those are for. And even though I don't have this part, it's a canvas band that sits like a belt under tension on top of the barrel. And the purpose is simple. When you're shooting quite a bit, you get a lot of heat waves coming off the barrel. So by having the strap over the barrel, when the heat waves rise off the barrel, they don't distort your view through the scope. And that becomes a real issue. Some people probably wonder what caliber it is. It's 6.5 by 55, and I'm not sure if we can focus in on the markings, but you can see that they note it's a CISM. Other than that, entirely reliable. I like the magazine system. The stock is certainly unconventional. It's fully adjustable. Again, I've said a few times, for me to take this out and shoot it for you to see, undoubtedly I would hit whatever target or metal target out there, as you would too. So I thought it more interesting to see the mechanism itself. And I've fired this one a few times just because it's nice to handle an accurate rifle, and it's 6.5 by 55. There's almost no recoil. Barrel removal is very simple. There's that hex tool, and it comes apart like the R93. Very simple. You can see 2 retaining screws. They're captive, so they won't fall out when you take the thing apart. It takes maybe a minute or 2, depending on how quick you are twisting. And that probably is it. The trigger is exceptional. People like talking about triggers. I get used to any trigger, but that's just me. And I can't really say too much about it. It's not an overly heavy gun. You would think the aluminum would make it very heavy, but it's not so bad. And I think that's about it for the CISM. If there are things I'm missing, feel free to write. And of course, have I taken barrels off my R93 and put it on the CISM? Yes. The bolt face makes the difference, but you could put a 30-06 or anything. As a 30-06, this is a single shot because the magazine isn't big enough for the 30-06 round. 308 worked okay. Can't remember what else I tried, but very versatile and a lot of fun to shoot. Very, very smooth functioning action, and actually I don't even mind the yellow, which is kind of interesting for a rifle. So that's about it. The Mauser CISM. Thanks for watching.